as well. Meanwhile, national veterans groups, of course, are reacting to Dr. David Shulkin's dismissal. The cabinet secretary, who was dismissed on Twitter, notified about it, according to Kristen Welker and our team earlier, by John Kelly, but the notice was made to the public on Twitter by the president. From the national commander, though, of the American Legion, who writes, Secretary Shulkin has acted in the best interests of America's veterans and was making meaningful, positive changes at the VA. And from the Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans of America, quote, firing a VA secretary is easy compared to finding someone who can effectively do the job. IAVA founder CEO Paul Rieckhoff now joins me. Paul, thanks very much. Your initial reaction to this changeover?
Here we go again. More upheaval, more controversy, more drama at the VA, which has been basically facing that ever since I got home from Iraq in 2004. So we've seen secretaries resign and be fired. And in the middle of all this is the veterans community that's coming home from war, that continues to have mental health and other needs, and an agency that badly needs reform. So this is a lot of drama that continues to surround the second largest agency in the federal government. It's bad for veterans. It's bad for politics. It's bad for America. And that's one thing we want to underscore. This is much bigger than just about veterans or about VA. This is about many of the other political fights and bigger controversies that are surrounding our government and all of Washington.
Do you think this is about the Inspector General's report, which criticized Dr. Shulkin for going sightseeing, bringing his wife along on the government's dime at an important European trip? Or do you think it's more to do with his opposition to a key Trump administration point of view, which is privatizing the VA?
I think it's all that. I mean, this is a war surrounding the VA that started, years ago and will probably go many years into the future. You've reported on these issues, at great length. This is always a fight about the central role of government, right? Should VA be expanded or should it be, put into the private sector at a greater degree? And that's the question that President Trump has never answered. He didn't answer it on the campaign. He hasn't answered it now. Does he support more privatization? What is his position on privatization? That's never been nailed down. So many of the fights we're having now around Shulkin leaving and Jackson coming in are actually fights we probably should have had a year ago when Betsy DeVos and Ben Carson and Tillerson and all these other controversial folks came in. We kind of got a pass. And so now many of those core essential fights about the soul of the VA are happening now instead of a year ago.
Dr. Shulkin, as Peter alluded to, has written an op-ed for the New York Times, and he says that become entangled in a brutal power struggle with some political appointees choosing to promote their agendas instead of what's best for veterans. I am struck by a recurring thought, it should not be this hard to serve your country. That said, there was the controversy over his expenditures, his personal travel, mixing personal and official travel. So do you think that Ronnie Jackson has the skill set to lead this larger bureaucracy?
Well, with regard to Shulkin's comment, look, it's always been this hard, right? He knew what he was walking into. Everybody who preceded him walked into a very difficult, complicated environment. Now, transitioning over to Jackson, he's a total unknown. He wasn't on a short list. He hasn't really been vetted. He doesn't have, extensive big management experience or extensive command experience. So to go from a surgical unit to a $200 billion budget with 300,000 employees is a massive jump. You've got to negotiate with Congress. You've got to work with unions. You've got to navigate the veterans groups. It's a very, very big job. It's high stakes. It's very political, and it's a lot of money involved. So, there's no reason to believe right now that he's got any previous experience that prepares him for that. So I hope we'll see a rigorous confirmation hearing. But with, others like Pompeo and others, probably dominating the news, this could slip under the radar. So we're calling on the Senate to really grill this guy and find out what he's made of and why he's capable of leading this essential agency in a time of war.
And have you heard from him? Has there been any outreach?
No. And to my knowledge, the president hasn't spoken to any of the veteran service organizations in the last few days about this change, about, his next moves. And I think that's a real failure. We can be a valuable resource to folks who work in the veteran service organizations. They're often a bridge between administrations. That's why we're able to work effectively with Shulkin and with a bipartisan group of Congress. So veterans groups are going to be more important now than ever as watchdogs, as a resource, and also for veterans who can't get served by the VA during this time of crisis. So we're there. Other veteran service organizations are going to be there again to fill the gap while the VA, itself out.
Paul Rieckhoff, thank you so much. Thanks for being with us again.